Welcome everyone. My name is Vlad. I'm a PhD student at Urbana-Champaign, and our paper is titled Automated Recording and Semantic-Aware Replaying of High-Speed Eye Tracking and Interaction Data to Support Cognitive Studies of Software Engineering Tasks. Or as I like to call it, iTrace Déjà Vu. So before we begin, here's some background information. And I sort of want to just stress the point that eye tracking is a useful mechanism to study the cognitive processes underlying how developers understand and develop code. So by analyzing where someone is looking while they're working with code, it helps understand how they're actually thinking about it. And with this in mind, we created iTrace. And the goal of it was basically a system to run eye tracking studies inside of real-world developer environments, for example in Visual Studio or in Eclipse or in many others. And sort of the high-level architecture behind that was that a study participant, so in a lab you might have a computer set up with an eye tracker. A study participant would be invited to do a software engineering task on that computer. As we're doing the study, the eye tracker would collect their gazes and where we're looking at on screen. This data would be processed into a unified format by iTrace Core, and then that unified gaze data would be sent to the plugins for analysis to happen. So this is the step where someone's looking at a Word file or what line column inside a file someone's looking at is processed, and at the end of it the content-aware gaze data is produced. But what we found was that there's a major performance issue that happens here, and this performance issue would even happen for any eye tracking situation similar to iTrace. And so this is what our research tries to address. So here's an example eye tracking study taking place inside of a Visual Studio editor to highlight this performance issue. So the participant is currently looking at this position here on screen, marked by the red circle, and the iTrace Visual Studio plugin is running in the background and converting this screen coordinate to file coordinates. So in this example, that'd be line 13, whatever column this is, and this file. And if we're using a 60 Hertz eye tracker, then the plugin would have exactly 17 milliseconds to do this computation. So can it keep up? Well, we collected the data, the performance data, and yes, both plugins can. So Visual Studio and the Eclipse one can keep up with one tab open. But let's say the environment is a bit more complex. So we have now several tabs. Can it still keep up? Well, Visual Studio doesn't provide an optimized API for these lookups. So Visual Studio can't do the computation in the Visual Studio plugin can't do this computation in 17 milliseconds anymore. But Eclipse plugin still can. But let's say we want to use a more advanced, a more modern eye tracker that's running at 1200 Hertz. And obviously these eye trackers provide finer granularity. So this might be a preferable to do this. In this case, the plugins will only have 0.83 milliseconds to do this lookup. That is a very short amount of time, and neither plugins will be able to keep up with that. So how do we solve this problem? And the key intuition is what if the lookups could be performed after, sort of as a post-processing step? And this is the main idea behind the Déjà Vu method. So during a study, the operating system state sort of transitions as time goes on. So for example, in this case, the participant is looking at this dot here with Visual Studio open, and then a while later a gaze data comes in and the participant is now looking at a different position. We might click something and the tab is open, right? and then we might scroll our mouse a bit, and so on and so on. And if you keep track of all of this, all of these events that happen, and store them, it'll be possible to replay them later. So if we start out with the same initial condition, then if we replay the gaze event, then mouse click, then scroll, and so on, this would recreate the operating system state and study perfectly. But now, since the computer is replaying this, it's possible to slow down the replay to allow time for computation. So previously, there's a millisecond pause between a gaze, and if you replay it, it'll be possible to increase the time the pause happens. So you could slow it down, and instead of having it be a millisecond, you could have it be a second. And now the plugins would have enough time for computation, even at high eye tracker speeds. So we implemented the Déjà Vu method into the Déjà Vu tool. And so here's sort of an illustration of how Déjà Vu plugs into the existing iTrace infrastructure. So here's the infrastructure diagram from before. Pay attention to the gray blocks, because those are the ones that are going to stay the same. So once Déjà Vu is used, the process is split into two steps. So now there's the recording phase and there's a replaying phase. So the result is the same, that content-aware gaze data is produced, but now the real-time recording phase is separate from the post-processing, non-real-time actual data collection phase. And the two of them are linked up through this event file that stores the eye tracking and human-computer interaction data. And as part of this research, we also evaluated. So here's the raw data, but basically what it's saying is that what we found out was that on average, in sort of real-world tasks, without Déjà Vu, the plugins would lose about 41% of the points. So they would end up dropping 41% of the data without being analyzed. But with Déjà Vu, since the replay could be slowed down an unlimited amount to allow time for computation, Déjà Vu drops almost 0% of the points. And if performing eye tracking studies sounds appealing to you, check out itrace.org. Once Déjà Vu is fully integrated into the system, Déjà Vu will be published there. If you want to mess around with Déjà Vu right now, it's available to download on the Zenodo link. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at this email. And I'd like to sort of thank NSF for funding us. Any questions?